It's the rematch that you didn't know you needed. No, not Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. It was a draw. We're talking about Jimmy Crute, who's taking on Alonzo Menifield. Second fight in as many fights, Matt, because if you go back and you watch that fight, and I'll throw the scorecards up there, these guys just had a tilly. And if you do look at it, Jimmy Crute, what did he excel in? If you had to guess, would it have been the wrestling? Yeah, it was the wrestling. Alonzo Menifield at space. Well, Jimmy Crute doesn't move his head. And he ate so
fun fight.
Many shots. He got dropped in the first round, dropped in the second round. In the third round, Crute rallied back with his wrestling. A quick grab of the fence, and all of a sudden a point was taken from Alonzo Menifield. What would have been a 29-28 decision win for Menifield ended up costing him, and it's 28-28. So now we get to reset the deck. We get to look at this fight. And overall, going back to that last one, Matt, Topology overwhelmingly had Jimmy Crute. He was the favorite in the matchup. I did not have him to win that fight, so I take some solace in the last one. However, I'm the guy that started this video out with blue hair, and you didn't. So if you do look at this matchup between these two light heavyweights knocking their way up the ladder, it's a tricky one to try and offer up thoughts, because for Jimmy Crute, I mean, we've seen him reach really, really high highs, right? Like, we saw that fight that he had against Anthony Smith. He was favored to win that fight. The leg injury cost him in that one. We've seen him just absolutely maul opponents who were hot at the time. Think of it. Go back a few years. He beat Paul Craig in dominant fashion. Jimmy Crute's one of those fighters that you have to watch out for, but the recent run has not been good, and he's not necessarily in Kevin Lee, Rinat Fakhretdinov type of territory, but for Crute, he really is behind the eight ball compared to a 35-year-old Alonzo Menifield who's on a roll. And we saw that against Ashkar Majarov. The win is what it is, but we've seen Menifield really string together some big-time wins. The losses are against some bigger competition, and if you make a case in this fight, I mean, Saikson Janjira Muay Thai, training with a guy like Chidi and Joe Kawani, that's getting you ready for fights like these, brother. So if you look at it for a guy in Alonzo Menifield, you saw him absolutely blast Crute with those shots. You saw him get taken down.
I thought he was going to stop him at the end of the first round. I really did.
So did I, especially on the rewatch. I knew what the result was, but I went, why aren't they stopping this fight? Because it was big-time ground.
Credit to Crute, though, because his resolve is absurd. But the weird thing about Crute is, other than the Misha Cirkunov performance, a lot of, and I won't say his losses, but a lot of moments where his opponents have success is in the striking. And it's weird because Crute himself isn't some awful striker. Like, he has a good jab. He does have decent kicks on the outside, but it always has been a factor of when he's forced to back up on the feet, it doesn't allow him to use his kicks as much. And he's not such a good boxer to where, okay, he's like a Dustin Poirier to where he can keep on throwing the jab backing up. He really does need to use his advancing footwork to have success on the feet. And like you said, Menifield made him pay for it, especially at distance. But I was surprised. Like in the second round, Jimmy Crute's still trying to go out there and pump the jab at some points after he has been hurt really bad in the first round. So for Crute, you'd hope that in his mind he's thinking, okay, it is nothing but takedowns in this matchup. I bring it up. I know the Cirkunov matchup, it was just one of those elongated grappling sequences where, hey, Misha Cirkunov is an absolute wizard on the mat too, but for Crute, I do think the takedowns are going to be key. And I know you bring it up that we saw it in the first fight, but I worry about Jimmy Crute and his overall durability. I feel like that's going to be a conversation I bring up on a couple of fights on this card. But at only 27 years old, like, this isn't me talking about Robbie Lawler's durability, right? A guy who's been in multiple Fight of the Years, one of the all-time great fighters. For Crute, it really has been, I don't want to say a fast downfall, because he's only lost to some really good fighters. Jamal Hill's currently the champ
and a former title challenger.
Exactly, but it is a factor of when a lot of the success to your opponent is coming in similar fashion. I worry if that's something that Crute can fix overnight, or if that's always just going to be a bit of a hole in his game.
So if you look at the respective UFC careers of both of these guys, Crute coming in off Dana White's Contender Series, got the win there in 2018, gets a contract. Menifield needed 2 performances, but 2 first-round finishes? That's kind of wild. They let anybody that has a pulse fight now.
He's like 98 Jordan on Contender Series.
Off Dana White's Contender Series. But if you look at it for Menifield, he is 6-3-1 in the UFC. And if you add things up for these guys, they've each only been an underdog combined in 1 UFC fight apiece. Alonzo Menifield was only an underdog too. Jimmy Crute was only an underdog too. Hussar, Michael Olszewczuk, where he ended up winning by, it was a performance bonus submission win in that matchup. So, again, the wrestling edge goes to Jimmy Crute. The striking edge goes to Alonzo Menifield. The 75% takedown defense for Menifield, even after all those attempts and successes that Crute had in their last matchup. And if you consider that last one again, as I said, A plus 150 for Alonzo Menifield his last time out. They're basically at par right now. People went back, they watched that fight. We're going to have a look at the fan vote. And again, Jimmy Crute commanded the lion's share the last time. I'm going to say over under 60% Crute this time.
I'll say over, but I do think it'll be close.
And it's the opposite. 1,007 total votes, 65% Menifield, 80% by knockout for the 35% that have Crute, 58% by decision. So everybody got off the train of Jimmy Crute's going to submit Alonzo Menifield. And that last fight was back in February 11th at UFC 284. A lot of 284 fighters on this card. So who do you have now?
I have a really hard time with this fight, not just because they fought to a draw, so of course they're probably pretty closely skilled, but if Crute can get Menifield down with a lot of time left in the rounds, I do think he can maybe not lead to a finish necessarily, but just have enough success to where he's avoiding the big shots. It doesn't look bad in the eyes of the judges. But I worried about Crute's durability really for a long time now, and he's been hurt by Menifield a few more times. I have a hard time with the pick, but I guess I'll jump into your side and I'll go with Alonzo Menifield.
Yeah, I mean, round one, left hook was what really got it going, and you had Jimmy Crute kind of stumble down to the mat. He got back up. A short right at the end of the round was the one that dropped him. Then there was a lot of ground and pound, and at the start of the second round, it was a short left that dropped him. But again, third round fence grab, you know the drill. I'll stick with Alonzo Menifield in the matchup. I'm sure Crute's going to go out there, maybe even a one-round game plan of, I'm taking this guy down, one hit, one kill jiu-jitsu, and it's over. And for Alonzo Menifield, you've seen him make some moves. I mean, Fortis MMA at one point, Saaiman as well. So a lot of big-time parallels between these fight styles. I'm really eager to see if the drop-off from Crute is warranted in the matchup. So really want to hear from you down below in the comments section. Both of us going with Atomic Alonzo Menifield to get the win. Some big-time fights and title fights at that in the main and the co-main. Flyweight and featherweight straps on the line. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.